It's January in Minnesota, where we regularly see temperatures in the single digits and negatives. So, anyone running into me right now would never assume that I have a tropical environment filled with exotic land hermit crabs inside my home. Keeping such an environment in these harsh tundra-like conditions can be a challenge. So let's go inside and I'll show you how I do it. Hello everyone, let's talk about bringing the tropics to the tundra. These tricks will be applicable to all crab habitat. My name is Sandberg, and thank you so much for joining us at CrabCon 2025 and this topic. A little about myself. I've been a part of the hermit crab community for over a decade now, and I've had my own hermit crabs for almost as long. I'm also Christine's Crab Care on Instagram, and I've spoken at CrabCons every year since 2021, so thanks for having me back. And this last year, my hermit crabs gave me Zoe for the first time, and I tried my hand at raising them. So I'm a hermit house aspiring breeder as well. This picture is me setting up my first real crab tank in 2017. But is this talk for you? So I have some questions. Do you live where the winter air hurts your face? Do you live where you get snow? Do you have trouble keeping your tank warm enough in the winter? Do you have trouble keeping your tank warm enough in the summer? Do you have trouble regulating your tank's temperature? Do you live anywhere but Florida? Do you live in Florida and use air conditioning? Do you have crabs? If you have answered yes to any of these questions, congratulations! This talk is for you, and I hope you'll get something out of it that will help your crabs and help your keeping of them. Quick disclaimer, this is not a talk providing full spectrum care. Consult a care guide. This talk is not meant to be a be-all, end-all resource on temperature. I think it's very helpful, but please, we need further research. We need further testing and other ideas as well. The opinions I'm sharing are my own. I'm not representing anyone but myself. And they may not reflect published care guides, but keep an open mind. We're all here to learn together. So, what's the temperature problem when it comes to hermit crabs? Our hermit crabs may warm our hearts, but they need us to warm their bodies. Let's take a look at where in the world my crabs are from. I realize this is not a map of the world, nor is it to scale, but it's relevant for this point. My hermit crabs are purple pinchers, which means they're Caribbean crabs, and they live down there in the Caribbean. Where do I keep my crabs? Well, I am in Minnesota, as previously mentioned, which is way up here at the top. Basically, we're neighbors to Canada. And why this is a problem is because this line is the equator. And as you should know, the equator is the warmest area on our planet, and the hermit crabs are generally pretty close to that line. I am not. The further away you get, the colder it gets. That's where we are. This is a graph of Nassau, Bahamas. I just picked a random city in the Bahamas that actually had weather data for me. And here we go. This is January 2025 for them. You can see that there is temperature differences and it does go up and down, but the range here is between 60 degrees Fahrenheit and 83 degrees Fahrenheit. Now let's take a look at my city, St. Paul, Minnesota, of the same year, January 2025. There are differences, but you still have that band of variation. And at a quick glance between the two, they might not look that different, except the numbers on the side are oh so very different. Whereas that one was between 60 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. This is between negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit and positive 50 degrees Fahrenheit, we can actually overlap these and see what the bands are. So this graphic that I made myself, not a data scientist, but you can see that this is in order of the degrees, and our our temperatures don't overlap at all. So there's a big difference, obviously, between where I keep my crabs and where my crabs are from, or that region from where they're from. When I was preparing for this talk, I took screenshots of my phone's temperature, just to highlight. Just it's cold. It gets really, really cold here. I joke that we're in the tundra. We're not technically in a tundra, but it gets cold, really cold. Those are again in Fahrenheit. But what about our crabs? They don't like it that cold. They would die in that cold. So, both Land Hermit Crab Owner Society and the Hermit Crab Association, two groups I'm a part of, they've they've got great recommendations here, and they're in agreement that the temperature really should be between 75 degrees Fahrenheit and 85 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on your crab species. Purple pinchers are better at tolerating temperature differences than some of the other species of hermit crabs, and that benefits me living in a very cold climate. So, temperature regulation, incredibly important for our crabs. Crabs are ectotherms, meaning they're not warm-blooded like us. They cannot regulate their own temperature like us. Their body temperature fluctuates with the temperature of their environment. This can be incredibly frustrating to get right, trying to get their tank warm enough. And I want to acknowledge that it's a common problem, and it can be really difficult. But I'm going to break this problem down into two pieces for us. First piece is the tank temperature. The second piece is the room temperature. And I feel like a lot of people talk about that first piece really, really well, but the second piece of the equation is often missed. And that is why I raised my hand and said, I want to do this topic, because I think that is a key part of the puzzle. Let's take a look at hermit crab tank. This is my hermit crab tank. Looking its best a few years ago, actually. Since then, it's a little bit more destroyed, but the picture still is accurately illustrative for what I'm talking about. So I have the heat mats, like many of you, on the back of my tank, and that is pumping out heated air. It's not pumping out air. It's heating the air that comes in contact with the mat, and that's inside of the tank. However, on the outside of the tank, we have lovely, cool Minnesota air that's around the tank. And because this tank is glass, the separation of these temperatures is not great. Glass is absolutely fantastic for viewing and for humidity purposes, but absolutely terrible for temperature regulation. If you've ever experienced differences in temperature, you might have struggled with condensation on your glass, which obviously blocks your view of your hermit crabs, and it also sets up an environment that's prone to oversaturation of the substrate, which can be a real danger for our hermit crabs. So, this is a frustrating situation for new and experienced keepers alike. Let's do our best to solve it. So let's start with the inside. We're going to talk about the inside, the first piece of the puzzle, the tank. How do we keep this tank warm? How do we heat the tank? Most of us, unless we live in a tropical environment, need a heat source. We being the hermit crab community at large, generally recommends UTH, or under the tank heaters. Now, these are strips that are sold for reptiles. We use them for our hermit crabs. I want to acknowledge that there's another option for heating reptile tanks, and that is heat lamps. Um, totally a valid way to raise the temperature. However, generally in the hermit crab community, we're recommending UTH under the tank heaters because they're really good for beginners. And a lot of hermit crab owners have never kept an exotic animal before, so they're inexperienced. But UTHs are safer, they're super reliable, and dare I say, foolproof. That's why we recommend them. Heat lamps can dry out your humidity, whereas a reptile will usually come from a dry environment. Our hermit crabs need that humidity to keep their modified gills moist so that they can breathe comfortably. So we don't want to zap the humidity. Heat lamps can also create hot spots in the tank, and while some temperature variation is good, um, we don't want concentrated heat in areas that can actually melt some of the materials we use inside of our tank and exhibit fires or household fires from reptile tanks often are coming from heat lamps. They're not coming from the UTHs, although that can happen as well if misused. So when you get a UTH, placement is everything. So we want, in the reptile world, there's not a lot of substrate on the tank. There might be an inch or less. And so it's um, typical to put that under the tank. For our hermit crabs, we have 10, 12 inches of substrate. We absolutely do not want that under there. Hermit crabs will bury naturally to get cooler, to cool off, to get away from the sun. And so if the heat's on the bottom, it's backwards compared to what they are thinking is natural. And so I highlighted in pink where my heat mats are. We want it above the substrate. We want to heat the air that comes in contact to it, not the substrate itself. So this is very important. We put the UTH on the back of the tank or the side of the tank above the substrate. So I actually have two on my tank. I have one on the back, and then I also have one on the side. So there's a bit of a temperature variance in my tank as well. The yellow highlighting on my tank is where I have used Great Stuff insulation on the inside of my tank to create a faux naturalistic background. You can go to the other CrabCon talk that's on the YouTube if you want to see how I built my tank. But basically, there is a very thick layer of insulation on the inside of my tank. So putting a heat mat on the back of that's not going to be as effective. So I don't have a heat mat on the back of that section of my tank, but otherwise there's no reason that you couldn't. My advice, Christine's advice, is to get the largest UTH that you can fit without bending it or without going around the corners of the tank. So measure the total length of your tank and height. If you have a very large tank, you can do 11 inch or 6 inch because that's where they come in. But get the largest that you can. Now, you might say, I've heard this argument and it's valid, but what about it getting too hot? So I have a tool for you. You can prevent your tank from getting too hot with an external thermostat. So this will turn off your heat mat when it reaches the max temperature that you're setting. And it will also turn on your heat mat if it dips below the low temperature that you set. A external thermostat creates a safety net for you, and you can plug any sort of heat source into it, and I would never have another tank without one. So I actually have a backup one that I keep on hand if I need to set up an isolation tank or for different like breeding purposes. If I ever get to a transition tank with the captive bred babies, I want that insulation, excuse me, the thermostat. I want that on every tank that I will have. So I actually keep it back up. But the one I've bought, which I'll mention, but the one I've bought has been super hardy. I've never had to replace, I've been very fortunate that I've never had to replace a heat mat or a thermostat. So, speaking of heat mats and thermostats, the tools that we buy matter. I am a big proponent of saving money where we can. The hermit crabs doesn't have to be as expensive as some of us could make it out to be. I buy used tanks. I've gotten free tanks. I've gotten used fish tanks from Facebook Marketplace and Let Go. But when it comes to tool recommendations, these are two tools that I absolutely will not skimp on. And that is making sure I get an ultra therm heat mat. They're sold at Reptile Basics and the Bean Farm. They're the same thing. You can buy either at either location online. And then I get a Inkbird thermostat. They have it on their own website and they sell it on Amazon. But what this does is it gives me peace of mind. And these tools are really good quality. They're highly recommended for a reason. They last a long time. They're reliable. So with that thermostat, if you take a look at it, there's the part that you can set the temperature at, and then it will turn off or turn on as long as you're like within that range. And then there's a probe that you just put into the crab tank to get the temperature reading. And then there's two plugs that you can plug your heat mats into. Highly recommend. However, even with the best tools that are sold, they're only going to increase your heat by a few degrees. And I feel like this is highly misunderstood, or maybe just we set poor expectations in the hermit crab community. We think, well, we're going to put a heat mat on it and it's going to be fine. Even with the best heat mat, it's only going to increase the heat by a few degrees because of pesky things like glass and living in the Arctic. We can't expect the heat mats to drastically increase the temperature, so we need to help it out. Insulating our tank is a good thing. A lot of us will use, and I personally use, Reflectix. That's a brand name, but what you're looking for is a reflective radiant barrier. It looks like bubble wrap that's in aluminum foil that's sold at hardware stores. It's easy to cut, it's easy to tape. You can safely put it over a heat mat. This is the back of my tank. Not as pretty as the front, but I have it over my heat mat and then duct tape onto the tank. And yeah, it's cheap. It's available at hardware stores. It's safe. I know many of us use it. I've never had a problem with it. However, I recognize I've learned recently that this product is not available in every country. For that issue, I would suggest car windshield sunshades. Those are more readily available. They're not going to be as cost effective, but they will also get the job done. Other insulation options, if you are fortunate enough to live in a warmer climate, as aluminum foil can be enough of an insulation, or cardboard, or wrapping cardboard in aluminum foil and taping that to the back or sides of your tank. You can also use fabric. I have used blankets over my tank when it gets into those single digits and below zero. So, outside the tank, again, like I said, even with the best tools, your UTH is only going to increase the crab tank by a few degrees. If your room or house is cold, your tank will also be cold, just slightly not as cold. So you have to increase the room temperature if it's very cold. I've absolutely broken down and pulled out my auxiliary radiator on occasion. In my opinion, this is safer than a space heater or one that gets extremely hot and like blows hot air around if I'm going to be leaving it on overnight or unattended, I absolutely will just use a radiator like that's in that picture on low near the crab tank to increase the overall room temperature. So, where in the house or where in the room do I place my crab tank? I've never seen this talked about on any large scale, and this is something I want to spend a few minutes talking about. Where you put your crab tank is absolutely important. So, your external walls are going to be um, not as temperature consistent as your interior walls. So, I highly recommend you to put your crab tank on an interior wall away from drafts, avoiding direct sunlight. The natural sunlight is still good though, so I'm not putting my tank in a closet. Um, and if your biggest issue is your AC, which I know that in some of the southern warmer states, such as Florida, this is a big issue because it might be 90 degrees outside, but if you have your AC blowing, trying to keep it at 70, that cool air constantly blowing on your crab tank is going to rapidly cool down your tank and it's going to really struggle to keep up the heat. So, where you put your crab tank absolutely matters. In this little footprint of a home, I would put the crab tank. My first choice would be here on an interior wall, not on an exterior wall. It's avoiding direct sunlight. There is like a sliding door window situation. If that gets very bright, I would draw a curtain or close the blinds. My second choice would be in the bedroom on that same interior wall, but I like to sleep at night and I know my crabs don't, so I'm not one to put my crab tank in the bedroom personally. Where's my crab tank? My crab tank is in my dining room slash sunroom slash mud room. It is a very multi-purpose Midwest room. And so I have my crab tank. It's quite a distance from those windows. It's on an interior wall. And so it still gets some sunlight, but it does get kind of drafty in this room. So I have a video to illustrate some of these principles. It was about a 30-degree day outside when I did these videos. The exterior wall was about 63 degrees, but if you go across the room to over behind my crab tank at the interior wall, the temperature was about 67 degrees Fahrenheit. So, insulating outside your tank, our houses have to be well insulated in order to keep our temperature um, more hospitable for our crabs. I know as a homeowner myself, looking at these pictures, I can just see the dollar signs, and you might not have it in your immediate budget to add insulation or to upgrade your windows or your doors. But doing these things absolutely can make your house more energy efficient and keep your house more consistent on temperature, which would obviously help your crab tank then in turn. But if you don't have the means to upgrade these things or any plans for the immediate future, there's still some things you can do. You can also do these things as a renter and on a budget. So, budget and renter friendly options would include curtains. This I feel like is overlooked, but a nice set of heavy curtains has been insulating our homes for hundreds of years. And adding curtains to a window and closing them at night will help keep the cold out. They also sell window insulator kits. If you live in the Midwest, you're probably familiar with this, but they're sheets of plastic that you use a hair dryer to put over your window. They're very inexpensive, um, generally speaking, for like the winter. And then preventing those drafts from coming in with a draft stopper. So this is a thick roll of fabric or stuffing that can go in front of the door. I've made one of these myself using scrap fabric that I just stuffed on the inside. If you're crafty, you can do something like that as well, but they're also under 20 bucks. You can buy one. So this is my dining room window that's covered with the light curtain and the blinds. And on the outside of this is about 64 degrees, 65 degrees Fahrenheit in front of the window. But if I pull this back just to show you the difference in the temperature, this window ledge is about 55 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can see the difference that just a curtain and blinds make to keep the cold out. In conclusion, I want to reiterate that it is our responsibility to create a warm home for these tropical critters, but you're not alone if you've ever had trouble regulating your temperature. And the temperature tricks that I've shared include properly setting up your tank, getting the best tools that you can afford for your tank, keeping your tank insulated, putting your tank in the most advantageous location in your home, and keeping your home well insulated as well. Thanks for coming to my talk, and I look forward to answering your questions in the Q&A. If you can hear me, please um, say something. Okay, thanks, Via. That's wonderful. Hey there, from Northfield. Is that Minnesota? um, I know our session doesn't start technically for a few minutes, but I'm just here like getting warmed up and getting the camera, making sure everything's working. I'm in Wisconsin. I have a family situation that I'm attending to, and um, my cell phone signal and the Wi-Fi signal at the house has been not conducive at all. So I'm really sad, but it's like the first time in 5 years that I haven't attended CrabCon. I am sitting at Starbucks. Um, Sitting at Starbucks and just to make sure I get signed in. Vivian, last year I did CrabCon tech support, and I feel you. It's a when it's a struggle, it's very stressful, and getting all of the techs up and running. I forgot my laptop, which is a rookie mistake. So I'm doing this from my phone and from the Chrome web browser, and that's working pretty well. But I had here my husband's iPad, which I'm not really familiar with. I haven't really used Apple products in like 10 years. Um, and I forgot my laptop, so he gave me his iPad, and I've been here since, for the last half hour trying to get his iPad to work. And I think it's Safari. Like, I just could not get Safari to cooperate at all with Hopin and Ring Central. So I was like, forget it. I'm just going to do it from my cell phone. Better to have, someone actually here to see and to say hello than trying to get that on the iPad. Just wasn't working. So I am on my cell phone and I can't see. It's like everything is like smaller, all the buttons and things. So if Vivian, if you could help me just kind of see like if there's questions that pop up, if you can pin them, or I can look at the chat. I can see the chat. And then I can see, okay, I see a question. Okay. Hello, everyone. We can start now, 1:30. I just want to say thank you for attending CrabCon. CrabCon is near and dear to my heart. Like I said, this is the first year that I haven't been able to
virtually be here for CrabCon, and that's because of a family emergency. But that is why we record our talks like way in advance, and Mary requires them to be submitted way in advance so that when things happen, we can still have a conference. So I'm glad I did that, and I can start to see pins. I see some questions here, I think. Let me see here. There was a question about the insulator. Okay, so thank you for watching my talk, and I'm sure that a lot of people have had issues with temperature regulation. So let's see here. Avery asks, hi, can I use the window insulator kit directly on the glass of the crab tank? That's a good question. I don't think that would work at all. So what the window insulator does, and there's actually a Starbucks. Let me a Starbucks window is a prop. So you can see how like the glass, you go like to the glass, and there's this space here. So what the insulator does, it puts a sheet of plastic. It would be like from here to here, and then that creates an air pocket in between the plastic and the glass, and then that is essentially what insulates the window, is because now there's a small contained pocket of air that can regulate that temperature. So putting essentially plastic wrap right on the glass of your crab tank is not going to do anything for increasing or insulating the crab tank. I wish it was that simple. That's a good question though. What Mia asks, what are good options for someone who put their crab tank next to a window and can't move it? Yeah, so our crab tanks are like really, really heavy, right? I don't even know how many pounds mine would be. I've got a 95-gallon tank with probably 6 bags of soil, or not soil, but sand, play sand in there. And you never want to move a crab tank when it's full, for sure, because that's a surefire way to crack the glass and potentially bury your molters and seriously injure or kill them. So we don't move tanks when they're occupied, and we don't move glass tanks when they're full of soil and substrate. Sorry, I keep saying soil. That's technically different. Substrate. So if your crab tank is next to a window, you're definitely just going to want to put something in between the tank and the window. So it depends on how big or how drastic your temperature swing is. You could put cardboard in between the tank and the window. You can put blinds on your window. You could put blinds and curtains, or just really thick curtains on the window, basically creating a physical barrier between the window for both sunlight, because sunlight at intense focuses is really going to increase the temperature, and that wanes throughout the day, right? But then you have the seasonal weather changes that are outside. And so you just want to put a barrier up of some kind. You could do, if you're handy, you could do like a piece of plywood in between the tank and the window. You could put insulation. They sell, I didn't mention it in my tank, but they sell rigid pieces of insulation. They come in huge sheets, but it's solid foam, and it's usually like pink or blue or purple or something, and it looks like styrofoam, but it's just like thick, and you can cut. It's really easy to cut with even just a bread knife. Pro tip, you get a bread knife from the thrift store, and then that's for your craft projects. So you cut that, and you could put that right into the window, in between the crab tank and the window, to create that barrier. What it's meant for is to like put in between the studs inside the wall as wall insulation or ceiling insulation. I've seen people use that for insulating like horse trailers and campers and all sorts of stuff. So that will help with insulating and creating that barrier between crab tank and window. So insulation, curtains, plywood, cardboard. I mean, for immediate future, you could just shove like a really thick pillow between the glass of the window and the glass of the crab habitat. I'd just be a little weary of putting things that are not meant to be insulation right next to the heat pad because you don't want to create like a fire, obviously. So I would be a little weary of pillow or blanket right on the heat pad. Let's see what else is here. Mel wants to know when my Zoe spawned. That's a great question. I think it was August. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. And if you are a aspiring breeder and have joined the Hermit House Aspiring Breeder Program, you can see all of my notes from the. I'm blanking on the name. Chat. It's a chat. It's not Slack. Gosh, what is it? I can't think of it. Sorry, Zulip. Thank you, Vivian. Zulip. Yes, it's called Zulip. So if you're serious about breeding, which we're not talking about breeding, it's not a breeding talk, but if you're serious about breeding, join the Hermit House Aspiring Breeder Talk and read what other people have wrote. Read what other people have wrote. Also on my Instagram account, I didn't finish writing out everything because stuff happened and I couldn't keep up with it, but I could definitely get the beginning on there, so that will be on there. I think it's in August though to answer the question. Can you guys still hear me okay? I'm in Starbucks and it's getting a little louder. Okay, Katie asks, I have a tank under a fan and deal with condensation on the front left side. Have to have fan on. What a good tip for that. Katie, is the fan on because it's for your own personal comfort in the room? Or are you having the fan on to is it like a fan inside your tank to create airflow? Your personal comfort. Okay. Yeah. So where that condensation is coming, so that fan blowing right on the tank is going to create a cooler air on the outside of the tank. And because the inside of the tank is warmer air and it's moist, I know some people hate that word, sorry, because it is a damp environment inside of a hermit crab tank, it's going to create that temperature difference is what creates the condensation. So I would suggest, if there's any way at all, to move the fan away from especially direct pointing on the crab tank. And if you can't do that, like if it's a ceiling fan, putting a barrier between the tank and the fan. So maybe on that section of your tank, you have a piece of cardboard on top of the tank to prevent this cold air from landing directly on the glass, because that's where the problems are going to come up. Yeah. It might not be a pretty fix until you could move the tank or move the fan, but that cool air blowing right on the warm glass is what's causing the condensation. And we don't want too much condensation, especially because if it gets too heavy, those condensation droplets will get heavy and then they'll run down, and it could create like a rain effect inside of the crab habitat running down the glass and creating one side of the crab habitat substrate that's overly wet. That's not good. It also could dry out the other side of the crab habitat, which that's even worse, in my opinion. Um, so, yeah. Shoot. Video keeps freezing. How is the video for others? Is this a me problem? Fine for Vivian. Randy Vogel asks, does heat affect humidity a lot? Yes, I would say so. If it's too hot, it's so humidity. My talk isn't explicitly about humidity because it's related, definitely, but it's slightly different. So humidity is like how wet is the tank itself, and then is your tank sealed completely, or are there escape points where that moisture can come out of the tank? And then is your home, most of our homes are on the fairly on the dry side, because if you have AC running, that is very dehumidifying. It dries the air. So if there's any sort of airflow between your tank and the outside, having the AC on is just going to pull out the moisture of your tank. So your humidity is not going to be as much. The moisture content in the crab tank is going to exist no matter what your temperature is, but the higher temperature difference, so like the heat inside the tank versus the temperature on the outside of the tank, the greater that difference, the greater you're going to see that moisture in the air as humidity or possibly condensation. Okay. Good questions, you guys. I hope I'm answering to, thoroughly, but not overdoing it. Any other questions from people about tank temperatures? Anything in the talk that I said, I wonder if I can share? Since I did the talk, oh dear, now I've lost it. No, come back. Am I still here? Okay, I'm still here. Hi. I can't see my video while I'm looking at the chat on my phone. I'm wondering if I can share a photo I have on my phone, like a screen share. That's not it. If I lose you guys, hang tight. I will pop right back on. I apologize. I'm trying to see if I can share a picture. Can I share a picture? Vivian, do you know if I can share a picture? Let's see what they say in the chat. Don't know. Okay. I'm not sure if I can share. Screen share button on desktop is a red line through it. Let's try that. I want to show you guys something. It's closed captions. That's not going to work. Layouts. Float. Fill crop. That's audio. It doesn't show me what anything is. It just, is there a way to, hold on, we might get somewhere here. I have something to show you all. One second. Is this applying? Okay, let's try this. Maybe. Okay, I put the picture I want to show you guys is my backdrop. Okay, can you see that? All right, let's see. Vivian says, woohoo. Does that see? Okay. I'll have another picture to show you. But this is my crab tank. And since I did the talk with you guys, I made this. And I wanted something prettier than just a comforter thrown on top of my crab tank, being that I live where I live and it gets really, really cold. So this is double line, 2 layers of like blizzard fleece fabric. And then so it goes on the top and then all 4 sides. And at the tippy top of this, you can see there's they're buttons, but they're not flat. They've got a little tiny log or something. And I sewed in a piece of ribbon, and then that can roll up. So now I'm going to show you what it looks like rolled up. And this is my little like invention. I didn't invent the concept by any much, but anyway, but I was really excited just to show you all. Sorry, I was really excited to show you all this. I wonder if I can. Okay, hang tight. You guys are so patient, so good. Thank you. It's been trying times. All right. Apply. It should be a new photo now. Oh, it's sideways. That's not helpful at all. Shoot. Sorry. Let me try something else. You do not want random pictures on my phone, just this one. Okay. All right. This is what it looks like rolled up. So I have those ribbon spools on the inside and then the double layer of fleece. And then I can roll the fleece up and attach the ribbon to the top of that like button. And so during the daytime or when it's not so cold out, I can roll up the sides, but then in the really cold winter and times, I can leave the sides down. And so this was a project I have been trying to finish before the talk was recorded, and I didn't get to it. But I recently just finished it. Super helpful in summer. And I'm excited to get that, use it and practice it this winter. And I had put it on there, and immediately my temperature started jumping up on the tank. And I was like, whoa, 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 it's summer. We can't be having that. So I ended up taking it off and setting it in the closet for now. But I'm excited to use that in the winter because it does create a insulating, like I said, double layer of fleece on the top and the 4 sides. Let's see if there's any questions. Michaela says that's a super good idea. Thank you. I've had it forever. And then as I was finishing this project, I don't know if any of you are crafters like I am, but it was like one that'd been on my list forever. And as I'm like cutting the last piece for the pattern, I'm thinking, wait a second, I want to redo my crab tank. It's going to be different dimensions. I'm going to have to do this all over again. What am I doing? Oh, well, it is what it is. Let's see here. Vivian asks, what's your favorite thing about Inkbird versus other thermostats? They're reliable. I've had mine a long time, and it's holding up great. You can read the reviews. They have lots of good reviews, and I haven't experimented with like other reptile brands for thermostats or like I've Inkbird was recommended. I bought it as well, and it's held up great. So that's why I recommend it. I'm sure there's others that are just as good. But I do recommend putting a little bit money into these types of purchases for our crab tanks because there's definitely a time and place to save money for your crab tank, right? Like I can save money on decor or food dishes, like stuff that doesn't have a long lifespan anyway, but things like the electronics, super important to put money in the first time so they're not going to fizzle out or potentially be a safety hazard later on. Marcy says Inkbird connects to the Wi-Fi too. Well, not mine, Marcy. Mine's 8 years old, and it does not connect to the Wi-Fi. That's very cool. Yeah, mine's literally 8 years old. It's been going for eight seasons now, 8 years. Just like I've had my crab for that long. Yes, the new ones. I'm sure the new ones are much more high tech than what I have. Sometimes high techs, or sorry, sometimes low tech just lasts a long time. So I appreciate that. Any other questions? We are getting to the end of it, and it is getting noisy in the Starbucks. Any other questions? Parade of Crabbitats in 8 Minutes by Larissa Meeks on the main stage, I assume. That would be a fantastic one to get to. I don't know if mine's on there. Mine might be on there. I forget. I submit my Crabbitat for everything. But you guys don't need to see mine again. It's already on this. It's already on this talk. So so thankful that you guys are attending CrabCon and watching my talk and taking care of your crabs and seeing how you can do well with your hermit crabs. And I wish you all just happy crabbing and happy CrabCon and all the good feelings for our crabbies and for our fellow crabbers. So thanks so much, guys, for attending and watching. And you can reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook if you have any questions about insulating your tank or about temperature control. I'd be happy to take a look at your tank, see if I could make any suggestions for you. Like I said, I'm have a family situation that I'm working with right now, and my internet and Wi-Fi is super spotty. So it's been a blessing just to be able to be here and like actually get on and do this. So thank you all, and I hope you have a great rest of CrabCon and a good, happy crabbing experience. Take care, everybody. Bye.